Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's now 8
Morning.
o'clock, and we will go ahead and start. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock, and we'll go ahead and start our committee on appointments. We have a number of resolutions today, colleagues, so we'll get right into that. The first is a resolution approving City Commission's appointment of Micah Perkins to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right. Micah also serves on our Brownfield and Economic Development, and I think just the background in construction generally will serve this board well. So, and I know that Ms. Turkelson will be happy to have more people added to BZA.
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, carries. Thank you. Next is a resolution recognizing, is there a reason why it says, is it because this is there a reason, pardon me, point of order, colleagues. It says recognizing versus approving. Is that because this is due to the role that Mr. Barr has?
Like it's a seat.
Correct. The appointment comes from the Friends of Grand Rapids Park.
Got it.
So the commission would recognize their appointment instead of approving their
Okay.
own appointment.
I don't think I ever noticed that before, so thank you for confirming that, Mr. Daniel. Okay, so resolution recognizing the appointment of Stacy Barr to the Urban Forestry Committee. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
And Mr. Barr is the new executive director of Friends of GR Parks, and I have yet to meet him in person, but I know Commissioner Ruppert, you're on the board.
Yeah, he's
And
fantastic.
Excited to have him in our city, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it carries, thank you. Next is a resolution confirming Mayor Bliss's appointment of William Vasilakis to the Urban Forestry Committee. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Okay. Mr. Vasilakis, I hope I'm saying that right, because with Isasi, you got to say other people's names right. Is actually an arborist, and so I think we'll bring, continued other expertise into that body. So pleased that he is willing to serve.
Great.
Any other comments? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, carries, thank you. Next is a resolution approving the City Commission's appointment of Stacy Barr to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
So again, colleagues, this is in Mr. Barr's position, having a seat on this board. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries, thank you. Next is a resolution approving the City Commission's appointment of Sam Moore to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, great. I think at our planning session at the end of last year, we had talked about Mr. Moore to serve, given his role with the Kent County Parks. I think this is a good fit.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that carries. Thank you. Next is a resolution approving the City Commission's appointment of Eric Brown to the City of Grand Rapids Affordable Housing Fund Board.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Mr. Brown, we are getting close to the end, and I will provide an update as we get to the bottom. But as you both know, Mr. Brown serves as the CEO of the Urban League, and pleased to have his voice on this body. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries. Thank you. Next is a resolution confirming the city manager's appointment of Jamon Alexander to the Grand Rapids Housing Commission.
So moved.
Support.
All right, thank you, colleagues. So Mr. Alexander, lifelong resident of Grand Rapids, CEO of WMCAT. If you remember, Miss Bobby Butler, we recognized her 45 years of service, and so this is to fill that city manager appointment. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries, thank you. Next is a resolution approving the City Commission's appointment of Carlos Calderon to the Urban Agriculture Committee.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. I think Mr. Calderon was a name, Commissioner Ruppert, that you advanced after some conversations in the first ward or with other people.
Yeah, no, I've been getting to know him a bit, and we appointed him to Stormwater,
Yes.
which is, he's happy to serve on both. He's on staff at WMIAC.
Great, wonderful. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that carries. Next is a resolution approving the City Commission's appointment of city staff to the Utility Advisory Board. Do you have a motion?
So
So moved.
Okay.
Support.
Thank you, colleagues. So again, this is a more generic piece, but because some of these bodies, we really do need a staff member, this would allow those appropriate departments to put forth a name. And I'm getting a nod from Daniel, so. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that carries. And then next, so that concludes all of our business for today. Next is a discussion of our vacancy list. So the first one that we have is the city clerk is gonna, there you go. Need a more precise mouse, but so the Board of Art and Museum, I can give an update there. I did talk to Dale from the museum as a liaison. Mr. Lyman Parks Jr. is looking to be reappointed. Just working through that, and then he has another name for the other opening. And I feel fine sharing the reappointments, but usually if somebody's new, we wait until they can go through the process. So,
Sure.
so that one I think we should be fine. We just did a BZA one right now, so that'll be great. And I think there is maybe one other name, and I know Commissioner, we had talked as well about some other people about BZA. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board, we just approved, is it actually two, or is it, yes?
3 now.
It's three, right? Or no?
Or 2 now after.
It still is two, right?
Correct.
Even after Mr. Brown. Okay, thank you. So colleagues, we have 2 more. One that is for certain on the body that will be here before us on April 12th. Thank you, City Clerk, for confirming that, and Daniel. And then I just want to have one follow-up conversation with the mayor about the last appointment. We had some names. As you know, the vetting process can take a little bit of time, and then also some circumstances change with people, but I'm confident that we should have both of these on our April 12th agenda.
Awesome.
Okay, and so that's exciting. Thank you. Thank you all for that. Next is our Civil Service Board. I did have one individual who was interested in serving. However, this does have a residency requirement, so I'm not able to advance that person, but I'm talking to that organization to see if there might be other people that would be interested in serving. We received another PIF as well. That person is on at least one other board, and I do think it would be good to look for somebody who is on one board. Certainly people serve on 2, but just some of the time commitment pieces on their other board is just, I'd want to verify that. So still working on civil service. Community Relations Commission, if you want to keep scrolling down. I know we have also been talking about a name here, Commissioner Ruppert, that was shared with Miss Stacy Stout in that office, and they help because there's an additional sort of questionnaire that they provide prospective applicants to the body, and I have not followed up on that, so we could probably just have a conversation. If not, if that person is unable to serve, I do have somebody else who is a 3rd Ward resident commissioner that I just talked to yesterday, so I'd be happy to share that with you.
Thank you.
Who I think would be good to serve on that body. I don't have any updates about the construction board, or I think the DDA and the DID. I think these are still waiting on some of the vetting pieces that the mayor had some names to advance. So just working on that. So hopefully we can maybe some of those we'll see coming forward. There, for the economic development in Brownfield, we did have one name, but that person, we're looking to have them go on the BZA that we just talked about. I do have somebody else that I talked to last week who I think would be good, who is a 2nd Ward resident who works primarily in the 3rd Ward, that I can also share after they determine if they want to apply. Electrical Board of Examiners and the Building Authority, I don't have any other updates for that. I think as Daniel brought forth this one for the Utility Advisory Board, we could look to do some of those for these bodies. Daniel and I talked a few weeks ago about these. I know at least there were a few where we need to change from Mr. DeLong to Miss Kate Behrens, just with some of that, the leadership changes in our deputy city manager. And then if you want to scroll down, I know the Historical Commission also had some folks being vetted, so I don't have an update for that. The CAB, Civilian Appeals Board, the mayor did forward her name to, after an interview process that she does. for Daniel, so that will be on the 12th. I think they are vetted, right? Or they are vetted, okay, thank you. And then you can keep on going. Housing Appeals Board, we could jump to that one. We did receive a couple of PIFs for that Daniel and I talked about the last time we were here. And there was somebody that I did specifically speak to who is interested in serving. They're just working out some of the vetting issues that they need to follow up on. Just typically we see that if people are self-employed, that's pretty common. If you want to keep on going, do you have anything for the Local Compensation Commission? No, not at this time. I don't have an update about the Michigan Street Corridor. I know Commissioner Jones and I had talked about that body in the past. And then Mobile GR, I know we had one, actually I talked to somebody last week who had submitted a PIF that I had talked to Josh about. And then, why am I blanking on the other person and Commissioner?
Ben
What'd you say?
Ben Campmeyer.
Oh, yes, thank you, okay.
I think he's through the vetting process, right? Yeah,
We appointed him last meeting.
yeah, that's right. That's
Okay.
right. Yeah, he's on.
So we just need to, so it's just one then, right? Is it one?
Or is it two?
So if it's one, we may have somebody who I talked to last week who was interested in kind of just looking at a variety of boards and was trying to determine which one would be best. So that's great. Good memory, City Clerk.
Yeah.
I probably need to bring I look at it, but then I put it away.
I know him as well, so
Oh, good.
that's why it was fresh in my memory.
Okay, thank you. The North Quarter CIA, that's the body that I serve on. We have a number of new members. We are hiring a new Corridor Improvement Authority manager. Probably at this time, we have a lot of engagement, so we're probably not going to look to fill this role just quite yet. We have some people who are interested, of course, and this is a mayoral appointment. Parks and Rec, we just did a couple, David, so you're welcome. Thank you for the back and forth to ensure that we get that body filled. Our Public Safety Committee, Commissioner Lanier has somebody who she's asked to apply. I have somebody who is going through the vetting process that I'll follow up with you, Daniel. I know we had talked about them before. And they had served actually on an advisory body for.
There's a question on that. So when Commissioner Repart reappointed Mr. Lim and he got approved back through, it was towards the end of 2021 and we rolled it over.
Yeah.
What time of year is it like, if we appoint someone, because it's annual, or we do this every year,
Mm-hmm.
but if we get to like July or August, if it happens,
Can we
do
do a
they
longer?
roll over for the next year? I mean, what's that time frame?
There's not a specific, cut date.
Right.
Just if I in the past have, if they've been appointed in, October or November of the same year that their appointment will expire, then I'll add language to the document that states the remainder of a one-year term ending such and such, as well as a full one-year term ending
Because
such and such.
because it gets a little tricky when you
Yeah.
appoint someone, and there's like 3 months left, and then it's like, okay, you have to do this again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So-
Exactly.
Well, and I think some of what we said, I'm sorry, Patrick, were you going to say something?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Looked like you were.
Giving a nod to Daniel because this is what we work on all the time.
Thank you. I do hope too, because colleagues, we said, I think kind of doing quite a bit in this first quarter of the calendar year. We're going to go into a pretty busy season of budgeting. And then there's the summertime, maybe people are not thinking about this too much. And then we said if we could have, I think we said in October, just kind of to review all those year-end appointments, all those things, which was kind of like that working meeting we did last year. So I'm hopeful then we won't run so much into that too.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, the rest of, I don't have another name for the Southtown. I thought we just appointed somebody too last time, but was there two last time?
Correct.
Okay, because Mr. Marcel Price was appointed last time, right?
No, he was on South Division.
South Division. Okay, I'm sorry. Dang it. That's why that one's not on there.
Yeah, right.
Okay, oh yes, this is because Miss Anna Jose is no longer working in the corridor, and so yes, okay.
Eric Williams was appointed to Southtown Advisory.
Okay.
That's right. So we got
So-
one more, though.
So this is one more, or this is?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Dang it. It's like a game of checkers, just moving them around. Thank you. And I think for the rest of the bodies, if you want to keep on going down, I know Uptown is there. I know we did a few last meeting. We just did urban agriculture and urban forestry. And then we've had some conversations about the reduction of vital streets, just given the length of time that body has been in place, and really sort of what it was initially set to do is now being seen. And then I know Commissioner Repart, you had talked about the Corridor Improvement Authority and then past that, West Side.
And we have one coming for April 12th.
We do, okay, wonderful. All right, colleagues, so any questions that you might have or comments you want to share or thoughts about any of the bodies that we have openings on?
I think so.
All right, we're getting there slowly and surely. And like I said, I want to have most of these, be nice to get a number of these filled. We'll follow up on the ones that have had a number of openings and are just remaining to be vetted, because that's somebody who just recently got appointed had kind of a little bit of back and forth. And, I think it can be an overwhelming process sometimes if you're trying to pull out some information regarding your past taxes and things like that, and just trying to get that settled. So I don't know what all those issues are, but I know I'd like to intervene if there's anything that we can do, if it's just a communication piece. So, all right. We'll go ahead and adjourn at 8:17. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It is approximately 8:30. The Fiscal Committee will begin at this point. First on our agenda is the salary ordinance amendment for supplemental classification ranges increase for supplemental employees in the Park and Recreation Department.
So moved.
Support.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So you have the salary ordinance up in front of you today, and we haven't actually looked at this since 2017, and we took a look at it, and we looked at the categories and the supplemental classifications, and the pay range is now aligned with the department's current structure, and this will streamline their ability to pay the payroll for these classifications. So, do you
Any
have
questions, colleagues?
I don't.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Next is an ordinance amending Section 1 of the Budget Ordinance 2021-13 for the fiscal year of 2022, Amendment Number 9.
Support.
Good morning, Commissioners. This morning, we have a few. The first one is the appropriation of the Grand Rapids Community Foundation Grant Award. We discussed this at our last fiscal committee meeting. This would, so we approved the contract. Now this would appropriate $175,000 in estimated revenue and appropriations to the other grants fund with no effect on fund balance. The second item is appropriation of the C4 Consumers Energy Foundation Grant Award. Again, we discussed this at our last meeting. Now we're moving forward with the BA. This is $40,000 in estimated revenue and appropriations to the General Operating Fund Executive Office with no effect on fund balance. The next one is related to the Water Department for reconstruction of Fuller Avenue. This would approve just over $1.5 million in revenue and appropriations to the Water Improvement Fund with no effect on retained earnings. Next one is, again, from the Water Department, reconstruction of Garfield Avenue, Vito Street, and California Street. This one is for just over $1.2 million in revenue and appropriations in the Water Improvement Fund with no effect on retained earnings. The next one is for Houseman Avenue reconstruction. This would appropriate $732,364 in revenue and appropriations to the Water Improvement Fund with no effect on retained earnings. Again, we have, Water Department's been busy, I see. The next one is the reconstruction of Prospect Avenue. This would appropriate just over $1.7 million in revenue appropriation to the Water Improvement Fund with no effect on retained earnings. And then we had Richards Avenue, again for the Water Improvement Fund, appropriation of $638,840 in revenue and appropriations with no effect on retained earnings. Then we have Strait Avenue and Wealthy Street reconstruction. This would appropriate just over $1 million in revenue and appropriations to the Water Improvement Fund with no effect on retained earnings. And then we have the replacement of private lead service lines. This would authorize an increase of $1,380,000 of revenue and appropriations to the Water Improvement Fund with no effect on retained earnings. And then number 10, this is related to the Public Museum reimbursement for expansion design phase services. This would approve an increase of $1,142,325 of revenue and appropriations to the Capital Improvement Fund with no effect on fund balance. Our contingent balance remains at $1,401,145.
Any questions, colleagues?
No.
Ready for the vote? All in favor? Aye. Next is a resolution authorizing the bid list for March 29, 2022.
So moved.
Support.
Good morning. We have 5 items today. I wondered if you have any questions.
I don't have any questions.
Don't either.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Next is resolution approving for the forecast report, which is already received and filed. Oh, we gotta get a vote? Okay, vote. All in favor, let it be known by aye
Aye.
for those 5 things. Okay, the next is our forecast report, which is received and filed already. Second is the warrant and travel report. Mr. Fritz.
Good morning, Commissioners. So 2 reports here for you this morning. For our warrant report for the period of February 25th through March 15th, the city released cash payments totaling just under $24.7 million. That includes approximately $4.7 million for our employee payroll expense and just over $944,000 for income tax warrants. In terms of quantity, it is tax season. The city released 9,834 income tax refunds and 1,447 accounts payable checks. And the 4 tables on the following pages contain the details of all the payments greater than $20,000. Also here this morning, we have our February fiscal year-to-date travel report. So this represents the travel spend by department for the first 8 months of the fiscal year. And that report shows that so far we have spent $695,000, or about 32% of the overall budget for the year. And those are the reports I have for you this morning.
Thank you, sir. Next is our treasury report, Mr. Glebinski.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
With the report today, inflation is always one of our major focal points, but this is to go a little bit deeper. This is about the bad inflation versus good inflation. So just so you can say bad cholesterol versus good cholesterol. When it's demand driven, that's the good inflation. What we have right now, though, is we have too much money chasing too few goods. And so as you find, just like I found out, I had to have a car repair and had to schedule it 6 weeks out. I couldn't just take it to my repair shop and drop it off and pick it up at 5. That's not the process that's happening today. So we have too much money, too few goods and supplies to go through, and so that's pushing our prices higher. There was a nice article, too, in MLive over the weekend, I believe, on the 3 major items for inflation that are hitting our population and our citizens, being gas, food, and other housing issues. As we're seeing, as these rates are starting to go up now, some of the reports that are coming out is it's now 20% more expensive to purchase a home or to own a home or to have your housing needs met. And that's a condition that's going to continue to, I'd say, worsen, because now we're looking at a Fed who's going to look at raising rates faster, and sometimes not just the 25 basis points, but now looking at maybe a 50 basis point hit going higher. We're seeing some other concerns also, because yesterday the 5-year Treasury inverted to the 30-year Treasury, which whenever we have interest rates invert, those are usually a warning sign or a key indicator that we should be expecting a recession. So we're going to continue to watch those those interest rates very closely, because the last time it happened in 2018, 2 different key rates inverted twice. And so that signaled to us we needed to push our investments out longer, knowing that we're going to face those economic headwinds and find a recessionary state. So we're very closely monitoring where our economy is going and where these interest rates are as they adjust. The Fed is going to be drastically decreasing their balance sheet, because they're holding all these Treasury notes they've bought over these years to help the economy move along. And, hopefully that's going to be one of the things that, as it unravels, money is going to be shifting all around our economy. And that's our concern right now, is that, and keeping an eye on that. But right now, with the city's funds, we have over $550 million invested, and we're still earning 1.28%. So we're still doing very, very well. So as we've seen this bottom of interest rates, we're going to watch that start to ride up. And as that's riding up, we're going to be able to replace our maturing investments with other ones that are going to hopefully be at a higher rate than 1.28%. And then we're going to look at what maturity range we're going to be looking at, because we want to say, hey, if we're seeing a recessionary state coming up, and all indications for us is we're anticipating more headwinds in 2025, 2026 is really 2026, 2027 is really what we're seeing a major point of concern for us right now. We want to bridge that gap if we are approaching a recession. We want to put at least our investments out a little bit longer. So we're going to try to bridge over that recessionary state to continue to earn good money on our funds, but also to really look at where our liquidity needs are going to be. Because as we do our budget, and as we're going through the budgetary process now, you're helping set the course for us to understand what money do we have to have short to cover our operations, and what money can we put out longer. So this is a good time for us, because we're really preparing and planning for any of those types of issues to pop up.
Colleagues, any questions for the treasurer? I have one question for you, Mr. Glebinski. Is there any way you can get gas prices lower?
Well, only if I open up my own. That's a significant investment I'd have to make, but I would say get your Costco cards and wait in line.
Absolutely. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay. At this point in time is approximately 8:40. Fiscal Committee is now closed.
You good? Good morning, everyone. We're going to call the Community Development Committee meeting to order at 9:15 a.m. on Tuesday, March 29th. Our first agenda item is a resolution approving a fireworks discharge permit for Image SFX for indoor special effects at the Van Andel Arena in connection with the Kid Rock concert on April 16th. Good morning.
Morning.
Some support.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I can. Okay. Microphone was off. Yeah, well, I'd like to say it's normal, but he's got a lot of stuff coming, and they just added this,
What is that?
the shotgun.
Oh,
It's a theatric effect, but yeah, I will be looking at it. I can't say I'll be approving it, but I'll be looking at it. The show is just getting started, so they're editing things and adding things, and yeah. So, but I will be doing a fire watch for the show also. But you're welcome to come down for the demo. It is on a Saturday.
not sure. Depending on if you, no, I'm just kidding. Any questions or comments or any takers on going to check it all out? No comments? Oh, we had one taker.
Well, give me a call if you're for sure, and we can make arrangements.
All right. Any questions or comments?
Nope.
All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. Thank you.
You.
Okay, so our second resolution is approving an agreement with the Michigan Department of Transportation for the implementation of safety improvements along Eastern Avenue between Andover Street to 40th Street with the total project cost of $587,000.
Support.
Good morning, Commissioners. So we're excited that this is the third project for your consideration on Eastern, where the city has applied and received federal safety funds. So this stretches from Andover to 40th Street. Previously, you have approved Wellesley to Alger and 36th to Kennesaw. And this project, consistent with the other two, will have mostly intersection improvements, consisting of traffic signal upgrades, pedestrian signals, and some of the traffic detection equipment at the intersections. Total project cost is $587,000, with $423,000 coming from a federal grant, some local construction costs from the Vital Streets program, and some other non-participating costs from the Vital Streets Fund.
Great. Any questions or comments? All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. Our third resolution is awarding a contract with Caterberg for improvements to Heritage Hill, Hillcrest, Paris, and Seymour Parks in the amount of $295,440, with the total amount not to exceed $475,000.
So moved.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. These are the final four projects of the 2013 Parks Millage. These are 3 third ward projects and 1 second ward project. We're very excited to embark on these and close out the funds from that original millage and really begin in earnest in the 2019 voter-approved millage projects.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. Thank you. Our fourth resolution is a resolution terminating an agreement for utility crossing on a former railroad property north of Oxford Street.
So moved.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
So very briefly, we'd like to stop paying on an agreement that's no longer necessary. But a little bit more context than that. In the 1950s, we entered into an agreement with, at that time, Pennsylvania Railroad Company to utilize 1,300 feet of their right-of-way. This is over west of Godfrey between Chestnut and Oxford. We have the pathway that runs through that area currently. So the annual rental payment started at $15, but now it's grown to almost $1,500. And the sewer that this was originally set out to allow for is no longer in use. And so, and also the railroad company no longer uses the property. There's no tracks there, but they did retain the right to continue collecting our payment. And so we would like to, we've worked with Omega Rail Management, who handles the lease agreement, and they informed us that it's necessary for us to go through this process to terminate. And so we're requesting that approval from you.
Great. Makes sense to me, Commissioner.
Yeah, it makes sense to me too. My only question is, does that, we want to, at some point, it'd be nice to connect that Oxford Trail. Will this impact our ability to do that at all, or no?
No, this is solely for the use of the utility purpose of the underground, so that should not impact that.
Okay, great.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner?
Is this the same Pennsylvania Railroad from Monopoly?
Oh, boy.
Why did I think the same thing? I just didn't say it.
Can neither confirm nor deny.
Right.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. It carries. Wow, I did think that, and I just couldn't bring myself to say it. Thanks, Commissioner. Our fifth resolution is approving a construction agreement and accepting public utilities easements for Cambridge Grove.
So moved.
Support.
So this is a private development in Walker, 25 site condos that are being constructed south of Richmond and east of Kennewa Avenue. The agreement will facilitate construction of sanitary sewer and water main, and this also provides for the acceptance of easements to cover those utilities. So request your approval.
Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. Our next resolution is accepting a sidewalk and utility, am I on the right? That's number 6, okay. Utility easement and authorizing a payment for Rotomill resurfacing of Fuller Avenue from Kalamazoo Avenue to Ramona Street and reconstruction of Fuller Avenue from Ramona Street to Adams Street in the amount of $250.
Support.
So we're preparing for this road project on Fuller between those limits. It'll include water main replacement. It'll be bid through MDOT for construction either later this season or in 2023. Right now, a lot of projects are subject to water main availability, and this is one of them. But the project will also include upgrading sidewalk ramps at the intersection of Fuller and Boston, and so it's necessary for us to acquire this sidewalk and utility easement from the property that's located at the southeast corner of this intersection to accommodate the upgrade. So requesting your approval, accepting this easement and authorizing the payment of $250 from Vital Streets funds.
Questions, comments? All in favor? Oh,
I was saying, we'll take that $1,500 we just saved and apply it to this.
there you go. That's right. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. The seventh resolution is approving a grant application in the amount of $995,250 to the Michigan Department of Transportation to be matched with a city share of $331,750 in connection with preventative maintenance of the 6th Street Bridge over the Grand River.
Support.
So based on some recent inspections, we would like to submit this grant application through MDOT's local bridge program for preventative maintenance on the 6th Street Bridge. Some work items will include bridge railing repair, some zone painting, and structural steel repair. So the overall estimated project cost is $1,327,000. And our 25% local share would be that $331,750 amount. The current call for projects is for fiscal 25 grants, and so we're asking for your approval authorizing us to submit this application.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. The next resolution is approving a contract extension for as-needed surface lot services with a $250,000 increase in authorized expenditures for a total not to exceed $750,000.
Support.
So this is the first of 4 of our as-needed contracts before you today that we're seeking to extend. This one was originally awarded to Superior Asphalt in March of 2020 and authorized for $500,000. We use this to make repairs and improvements to the city's surface lots. And the contract documents, as with the next 3 items, reserve at the city's option the right to extend. And it has already been extended once through July 1 of this year, so we're asking your approval to extend it again. With no increase in unit prices, the contractor is agreeable to holding those prices through June 30th of 2023. And so also we're approaching $400,000 utilized thus far in terms of authorization. And so we'd like to also request your authorization to increase that amount by $250,000 to a new not to exceed $750,000. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. The next resolution is approving contract extensions for concrete and facade restoration at various locations with no change in previously authorized expenditures of $900,000.
So moved.
All right. In June of 2020, this contract was awarded to 3 contractors to perform repairs or improvements at city-owned facilities. It was extended for an additional year last June. Also in October of last year, Commission authorized an increase from $450,000 to $900,000 on this particular contract. So we'd like to extend it again for an additional year, running through June 30th of next year. And the contractors have agreed to do so again with no increase in their unit pricing. And the currently recently authorized expenditures are sufficient at this time.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. The 10th resolution is approving an extension for as-needed asbestos and lead abatement at various locations with no change in previously authorized expenditures of $300,000.
Support.
So this was awarded to 2 contractors in April of 2019, again for as-needed asbestos, lead, and mold abatement at any of our city facilities. It's since been extended on 2 occasions. As with the others, the contractors have agreed to hold their prices for an additional 1-year extension through June of next year, and currently authorized expenditures are sufficient at this time.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. The last resolution is approving contract extensions for as-needed roof asset management at various locations with no change in previously authorized expenditures of $975,000.
So moved.
And this one was awarded to 3 contractors in 2018. Utilized this one for roofing repairs, preventive maintenance inspections, small replacement projects, and also leak responses on city-owned facilities. We've extended it 3 times already. Contractors have again agreed to hold their pricing. So we'd like to extend this one through June of next year as well, with no increase in the authorization.
Great. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Committee of the Whole as we round out this beautiful month of March. Commissioners, we have a full agenda today. Just a couple of notes to bring your attention to. At the end, I will ask for executive session for 2 of our appointed officials' quarterly reviews, 2 p.m. with our clerk and 4 p.m. with our treasurer. And then also, I hope you saw the email, we are going to go ahead and postpone the presentation on cannabis until we can have a full commission here because it's such an important topic. We want to make sure all of our colleagues are around the table for that discussion. So we'll get started on our action items today. The very first one is a resolution scheduling a special meeting of the City Commission in May, and this is for our budget sessions. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
All right, moved and supported. Commissioners, any questions about this?
Just one comment, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager, for being consistent with the Tuesdays.
Yes, thank you. I think you heard that feedback loud and clear. Yes. Commissioners, any additional questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next that will take us to a resolution scheduling, a resolution setting April 12th as the date to consider zoning ordinance text amendments to allow the reduction of residential lot width requirements. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Support.
All right, moved and supported. So Commissioners, we have our Planning Director, Ms. Turkelson, here today. We did have a lengthy conversation about this at our last meeting. The request was to make some additional changes and then bring it back today. And again, this would be to set the hearing for April 12th. So I'll turn it to Ms. Turkelson to see if she has anything to add.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commission. So today is a much more abbreviated presentation than what I gave to you last time, but I did want to make sure I covered the highlights of the changes so that hopefully you'll feel comfortable moving forward. So we did introduce the item. We mentioned that there were some requested changes. Specifically at a high level, we talked about aligning the allowable lot width reductions with the minimum lot width reductions of the current ordinance. And really, those numbers are informed by the neighborhood pattern workbook in the presentation that we saw at the last meeting. And then secondly, we wanted to make sure that it was clear that lot width reductions could also apply to new 2-family dwellings when there's an existing vacant lot. So it would empower the Planning Commission with a few more tools to provide the incremental infill of development. So as the Mayor mentioned, today's resolution sets April 12th as the date to consider the ordinance. Last time I noted that the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing and recommended approval of the amendment. So this applicability, I mentioned that it does apply to newly created lots, allowing for the reduction of lot widths for single and 2-family dwellings. It also would, with the amendments that we discussed last time, would allow for the reduction of lot widths for existing vacant lots to support the new 2-family infill development. And then also here's that gradation of the lot widths that we've mentioned previously that better aligns with that neighborhood pattern workbook with the 36 feet in a traditional neighborhood as the minimum, 42 in the mid-century neighborhood, and then 60 feet in the modern era neighborhood. All right, last time I reviewed these, I don't think I need to go over them again in detail unless the Commission would like me to, but these are really the key elements of the proposed amendment. This is that neighborhood pattern workbook that I mentioned previously that shows that gradation of lot sizes being smaller in our traditional neighborhoods or our core, and they naturally get wider wider and larger as we move out towards the periphery of the city. The practical application I mentioned previously, in the case of where we have an existing lot that appears to have an existing wide side yard, it would allow for the split of that lot and then the construction of a new unit, and that's shown on the A and B example below. And then this was the new piece of that, where it's an existing vacant lot today, would allow for the Planning Commission to consider a lot width reduction to support the infill of 2-family dwellings. Currently, there's that formula that requires 2-family dwellings to be 130% greater in lot width, so it would allow the greater lot width than single family, pardon me, and so it would allow the Planning Commission for that reduction to be used for that, again, that incremental infill with additional density.
That's great.
So as next steps, today's resolution sets 412 as the ordinance consideration. There was also conversations at the last meeting about how do we engage, how do we communicate this? And so this was some preliminary strategies that I am proposing, that we could do a presentation to the Neighborhood Association Collaborative. We could send a letter to all neighborhood associations and housing providers to make sure that we're communicating what the change or what the opportunity could be. Work with our communications department on a social media strategy. And then also we do have a lunch and learn series at the Development Center where we could look to the design professionals of our community to make sure that they're aware. So should they be hired by a property owner, they would be able to communicate what opportunities exist. And then as an aside, I think Commissioner Lanier, you asked me about the modifications that were made in 2018 with the duplexes on corner lots. We were able to determine that 12 new duplexes were created by right as a result of that change. And we are implementing those tracking systems as we move forward so that in 2 years I can report back that should this amendment be adopted, what changes have resulted or occurred from that. And that concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? I appreciate the additional work, and I'm happy to see this move forward. Also I said this last time, but I want to thank our community partners. I know Ms. Wells, as well as Ryan Kilpatrick, have been actively engaged in this conversation. So, Commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, that will take us to our third item. This is an item authorizing the Grand Rapids Kent County Convention Arena Authority, or as we call it CAA, to lease property and enter into an operating agreement and to take all steps necessary to effectuate a lease and operating agreement. Can I get a motion?
Support.
All right, moved and supported. Mr. DeLong will tell us about this item, and I should note we do have some folks from the Convention Arena Authority here with us today, and they are able to answer additional questions if we need them to. So Rick Wynn and Rich McKeegan, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning, members of the Commission. So today we're bringing before you a request from the Convention Arena Authority to take the steps necessary to enter into a lease with the new owners of 20 Monroe Live. This is an opportunity that they believe will help improve the entertainment offerings downtown and the work that they've been doing to broaden them and work with their inclusive approach to programming. And it's a opportunity that they would like to pursue. So if we approve this today, they'll be able to negotiate the lease and operating agreement with 20 Monroe Live to move forward with that. So you might recall that we actually worked early to incent 20 Monroe Live. So this was part of the dual project that included the venue towers, which ended up being the housing on the site, and then 20 Monroe Live, which was all connected to the Bob. And so 20 Monroe Live has been sold, and this is part of now the new approach to operating that facility. So it's our recommendation that we proceed to give the CA authorization to proceed with this lease negotiation. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. DeLong. And I should also add that the new owners of 20 Monroe, they were actively looking for someone to partner to help operate it, and they are the ones that approached the CAA and asked them to partner with them. So I think that's an important point to emphasize. Commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next up will take us to a resolution approving and authorizing the Grand Rapids Kent County Convention Arena Authority to exercise its option to purchase a portion of the 201 Market property and effectuate purchase thereafter. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
All right, moved and supported. Again, we'll start with Mr. DeLong, who's been actively involved in this process for a number of years, actually starting, or maybe the city manager wants to start. I think it's been several years since the state allocated $5 million for the Amphitheater project to the CAA. So there's been a lot of work being done over the last 2.5 years, really looking at how we can make this a dream become a reality. And so I'll start, I believe, with our city manager, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. DeLong. And it looks like, Asante, are you passing out additional information? All right, city manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, commissioners. I want to thank you, Mayor, for giving me this opportunity to provide a prelude to this important project. And as you know, many transformational economic development projects, they don't happen overnight, they happen over time, even much longer than the 2-year period we have, you've highlighted. This vision of major transformation on the river has taken place, and I want to thank our community partners, both public and private, on the public side with the county, for their partnership in supporting the CAA, the Convention Arena Authority, in this land acquisition opportunity, but also their partnership in helping us to provide take advantage of another public site to relocate our city services that stays near the downtown Central City area at the Scribner site, and that was action that you authorized us to take early in 2020. I also want to take the opportunity to thank our private partners, namely Grand Action and 20 Monroe Live, as well as Grand Action and others, for their effort in seeing the opportunity to really lead with private investment. And you'll hear that with the amount of total commitments, as we look at potentially a $120 million project, there is little public debt financing that will occur. Only $20 million, but there is great public benefit. You'll hear Mr. DeLong speak about the need to address some of our housing supply needs in this project. That there will be almost 1,700 housing units at various income levels and affordability that will take place as part of the development. There's a significant amount of jobs that will occur. And there's also the opportunity, as we dispose of land, to continue our vision of creating alternative tools to address our housing shortfall with the Affordable Housing Fund. As we have discussed before with this project, the opportunity to place almost $10 million in our Affordable Housing Fund. And so there are a lot of things that this project accomplishes, but at the center of it is a great asset that we will need in our community to continue to be a destination of choice, with an amphitheater that seats over 12,000 people, and will not only be an entertainment venue, but will be available to the community, with significant number of community benefits that will be created around the amphitheater, with green space, with parks, but also an opportunity for some of our community partners. I spoke with GRPS about where in the city can they convene multiple high schools and all of their students outdoors safely and have a planned sponsored program event. There is no football stadium that can convene that gathering in the city. There's no outdoor stadium that can do that. And this amphitheater provides such an opportunity, and that will be an additional benefit, as well as other community gatherings that we would like to have, I would love to have had during the pandemic, as we found the need to safely gather outdoors was in great demand, even by the use of our parks and outdoor social zones and social districts. So this project accomplishes a lot. I do want to thank not only our partners, but our staff. And Mr. DeLong has seen this from earlier iterations of it to what we're bringing forth today, which hopefully with your support today helps us get this across the finish line. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. DeLong.
Great, thank you. And Eric has a presentation, so
I do.
we'll work through that, and then we can ask questions afterwards.
Thank you, City Manager Washington. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. And very pleased for us to be able to have this opportunity today to view the culmination of years of work that you've put in, that we've put in to get to this point. And so let's talk about the opportunity. So the corridor, we want to talk about the project in terms of a corridor. So starting at Fulton Street, going all the way south to beyond Wealthy Street, that's about 31 acres of riverfront land. Riverfront land in an urban environment along a river that is gathering a lot of attention in terms of restoration. So as we've talked to interests around the nation, they've told us that this is the prime riverfront development site one of the prime, maybe the prime riverfront development site in the nation. And you can see why. So there, to the north, the property between Fulton and Wealthy is owned by private parties. You might remember Charlie's Crab that was there, for example. So that's prime for redevelopment. And then when you move south of the US 131 S-curve and down past Wealthy, those are properties that are under our control. And so this combined 31 acres is a remarkable opportunity for our community and a remarkable site kind of in the nation. So it's really good that we're able to bring this forward. And you have helped to make that possible by votes you've taken in the past. So you recall that, we had to acquire a potential site to relocate to, and that's the Kent County Road Commission site. We looked far and wide, found a great site at a good value to relocate to. And also we had to find a way to relocate the sewer, which is represented by the dashed line on this graphic. And that's been an impediment for a very long time. It's been actually a barrier. It's caused other attempts to fail. And in this case, we found a way, working with private partners and with the CAA, to make it a success factor rather than a fail factor. So that project is underway. You probably recognized the construction last year as you were trying to move around. And actually, if you were trying to get through the Fulton and Market intersection today, you'll see that it's closed for construction because we're finishing the sewer project this year, and it'll be done in time for midsummer. So that's the overview of the project. So the project started with engagement, and our partners did considerable engagement. So they employed the services of Scott Welch from Global Bridge Builders and reached out to the community and were very intentional about talking to a number of parties about it. They started by looking at past studies. So not only was there engagement in this work, but there was all the engagement of prior work that we've done. So Grand Action had done a destination asset study to look at what should be next in this community if we want to continue to build a bustling destination economy, a place that people want to come, and we become the signature place for vacations or for conferences. So that was what the destination asset study was about. And then River for All engaged thousands of people in imagining what the river should look like, and also imagining how we would develop the edges. And that River for All study has been incredibly important in other work that we've done. Of course, we're a partner in the Whitewater work and have been engaged in everything that has moved forward with that project, and including the equity work that's been done by Sierra Atkins and members of our Equity and Inclusion Office that is part of the framework for River for All. And then, of course, the Grand Rapids Housing Study from 2019 that talked about the amount of housing that we need in our community. So those were all work that had been done in advance. Then there was the work that was done by Global Bridge Builders and others to get input about this. And you can see that the sessions that were done and the outcome of it is over in the pop-up boxes on the side. And you can see that the largest boxes are the ones that were reported the most by the persons that we're engaged with. And so local minority ownership and pop-up shops and engagement was obviously a very key factor. River activation was key. Public accessibility to parks. All that was very, very important, along with mixed income housing. And so the idea for this redevelopment site is for it to be a community site, to be accessible to all. So the amphitheater, as the city manager mentioned, could host a wide variety of events, all kinds of events, and they're outdoor, which gives it better sustainability, I think. So if we ever have to go through what we just went through the last 3 years, we can have outdoor events easier than we can indoor events. So there are a variety of ways to make this work. So there are other community and cultural benefits that have been included in this project as a thread and a frame and a foundation of the project. So we will use the proceeds to generate dollars for the Affordable Housing Fund over time. So the city manager mentioned the $10 million Affordable Housing Fund investment, and that will come to pass. It will use the inclusion plan for economic development for private development on the site. So you might recall that over the last year, Jeremiah Gracia, our Economic Development Director, has reported that policy has generated over $13 million in investment in private projects that we've never created before. That policy works and will be employed in this approach. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be collaborating with the River Equity Plan. And so Ms. Atkins and the work that has happened around that has been very powerful. They have recruited additional micro-local business enterprise companies very successfully. And that will be important not only for river work, but also for this work on this site. Mixed income housing is a part of the plan, and we want to create up to 1,700 units of housing on this site, and those housing units will be mixed income in terms, particularly on the 201 Market site, and actually as you get to the Wealthy Takeout site, which is where our 509 Wealthy building is located right now, is a really good location, we think, and has been pointed out to us as a really good location by national interests that are interested in developing affordable housing. So we have that working for us as well. And then also, as we create private development on the site, we will have tax increment revenue to help us with our relocation to 201 Market. So we'll have some of the proceeds from the sale. We'll have tax increment revenue generated from private development on the site to help us move. And so it's very economical for us compared to other scenarios, which would be 100% where we pay the bill. So in this case, at least half of the debt will be paid for by tax increment revenues. Some of the costs will be paid for from the cost of proceeds or from the sale proceeds, and the rest will be paid for by operating departments. So this is very affordable, and it works. Okay, so what have we committed to date? And we talked earlier about the work that City Commission has done to help move this project forward. So in November of 2020, you authorized a MOU with private partners in the CAA for a couple of things. One was for the relocation of the trunk sewer. Everybody was assigned a cost based on an analysis that our engineers did, and everybody contributed their money. So that money was up front as we started the project and is still on deposit and is being drawn down as we move forward. That agreement also provided a process for the acquisition of 11.6 acres of the 201 Market site as part of the agreement. And that was to the benefit of the CAA. And so as early as 2020, we envisioned that the reason for doing this work was to develop this corridor, and one of the ideas was to include the amphitheater. So that this MOU gave we got started on the sewer work, which cleared the way, and it gave all the partners time to do their due diligence to be ready for this moment we are here today to talk about. And so, and they've done a really good job of taking advantage of that time for due diligence. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So in addition to the $17 million, we're also have included $2 million to convert Market from its former, remember the wide 4-lane street that was full of trucks, to a more pedestrian scale downtown street where you will be able to walk, have commerce, live on that street rather than just have it be a corridor for transportation. Again, I mentioned that the CA secured the option, which is what brings us here today, and they're ready to exercise that option. And it was for the 11.6 acres at the northern portion of the 201 Market site. So if you can imagine, south of the highway, north of the dash line that comes in there a little bit, that's kind of the 11.6 acres, which means that there's additional property there to sell to other private parties for development as well. So then, the other thing that we've done, that you approved in February of 2020 was the acquisition of the Kent County Road Commission site. So before we felt comfortable moving forward with development of the 201 Market site, we needed to have a home. We needed a place to go. So, it's, as anyone who's moved a house, it's always better to have a place to go once you sell something than it is to not have a place to go. So we found the Kent County Road Commission site. And that site is a nice economical site. It's about 15 acres, will fit there well, and we have a plan for relocating to that site, and it'll work really well. And then, in terms of the due diligence I talked about, Grand Action 2.0 commissioned the team of Populous, which is an international firm that does planning and development, and also Progressive AE, which is a local firm that does international, or at least national, development and planning. And they have also, to create a vision for the site, and Grand Action 2.0 has also taken the step of retaining Rossetti Architects, which are the architects that did the design for the Van Andel Arena. That has worked super well and is one of the best arenas in the nation. And they've retained them to work on development of the amphitheater design. All right, so what does the 30 acres, what is a vision for the 30 acres? So starting from the north, which is at the top of the slide here by Fulton Street, you can see the dense development of that site, and that along with a park. And one of the things that you'll see when you look at this slide is the amount of green. Okay, and the green here represents parkland. And so the idea is to have up to 10 acres of parks within this 30 acres. So it may be less than that. It may be, about that. But the idea is to get as much park as possible on the property. And so design that incorporates green space is important, and that's part of making this site accessible for the entire community, and also drawing people to the site, right? Because if you think of places you may have traveled to, or places we have where parks are accessible, people come to them, and so that's the idea here. So the north site, you can see some north part of the site, north of US 131. You can see the dense kind of tower development with also a green living room there, which will be a place for people to enjoy that site, get access to the river. And another key aspect of this design is the green ribbon that follows the shoreline. So we intentionally, when we sell the 201 Market property, we're retaining at least 50 feet along the frontage for development of green space. And we believe that other developers and the CA will incorporate green space on their property into that green ribbon to create the space that we are allocating here. So so the green ribbon goes through the entire site, all the way from Fulton Street, and this was a key connector also in the region, because right now there's a gap there, right? So you can't use Market Avenue, because on the old Market Avenue you get run over by a truck, and you can't get through the site because it's secure, because it's used for public services work. So there's been no way to get from the walkway we have on the east side, which goes all the way north, or to the walkway, to the path on the south that connects to Kent Trails eventually. This gap. This solves that problem and creates this place so anybody who enjoys river trails, biking, walking, fishing, all the activities that go along with that will have access here. So then moving south then of the highway, you'll see an orange line that goes across the river, and that's the concept of a pedestrian bridge. And that bridge would link the 201 Market site with the west side, and it would land at about the south side of the Seidman Business School. And so it's an exciting moment for connections, another connection. We know how well the Blue Bridge works, right? It's become iconic in our community. Gillette Bridge is another iconic pedestrian connection. We believe this one has the same potential. And so in addition to being a great community asset, it also serves a really important function. So because there currently is a lot of surface parking in this area on this side, so as we think about how do we access Amphitheater and how do we make it accessible, that surface parking could be quite helpful. And also it would it'd be a benefit for anybody on the west side, instead of crossing the Fulton Bridge or coming the other way on the Wealthy Bridge, you can park there and walk across and make it a nice walk over the river, just like you do the Blue Bridge or the Gillette Bridge when you're going to the fireworks or something else. So, so it's a really important part of what we're doing. The amphitheater is shown. It's you can see the label that says Amphitheater Lawn and Park, and so the amphitheater will be developed in a way that has about 6,000 fixed seats, and then space for another 6,000 attendees. So that's why it's 12,000 capacity. And that lawn will be available for public use when it's not being used for a show. So that's a co-development concept that is really important as we move forward here, to keep in mind that we're creating a entertainment venue, but we're also creating a public venue, and it's one that can be used when there's not an event, which will be a lot at the time. So it'll work out pretty well. We're working on the orientation of the amphitheater as we move forward on the design, and we do have some work there to do in terms of making sure that it's acoustically effective, and we'll work to take care of any potential noise transmission issues. But it's in a great location. The orientation works. There are no issues at all with that. So then as you move forward further down the site, you'll see additional housing and additional parkland. And you'll see, but also one of the, north of the amphitheater and south of the highway, you'll see additional private development of housing. And the final form of housing could vary. This is an idea, a plan, but the capacity of 1,500 to 1,700 units is what we're looking for. So we may see a different style of development, but we'll see the same elements in terms of housing, mixed-use housing, and parkland. And then as you move south of the railroad tracks, which is just south of the active attraction park, that's the 509 Wealthy site that currently is where traffic safety is located. And we think that's a great spot for potentially a LIHTC investment and low-income housing tax credit investment. And there already is interest south of Wealthy in those same kind of investments. And the Wealthy connection is really important because that's a great way to get to the zoo. It's a great way to get to other trails and parks on that side. And this also has some of the best river access currently natural river access in our inventory. So that's the project overview in a nutshell. So the project will develop mixed use. We'll create and deliver mixed use development. As I mentioned, inclusive economic development is a fundamental, and we'll use our economic development policy for inclusive economic development as part of this. We'll get up to 10 acres of new riverfront parks, recreation space, and trails. Also, the connections to adjacent neighborhoods are important. So we talked about the connection to the west side. The bridge connections will be better and easier on Fulton and Wealthy that we have now. But also there'll be connections up the hill to the Granville neighborhood and what's happening around Founders and Granville, that neighborhood, and also the Roosevelt Park neighborhood moving further to the south. The riverfront trail connections are critical to making connections to Kent Trail and also linkages to the White Pine Trail. And we've been investing in this consistently for decades. And so a project you might recall that is in the process now of moving forward is the trail area north of Leonard That is a project we just received 4 grants for of $1.2 million. That'll be moving forward. We'll complete that link. This will complete the southern link and will help us move forward. The other thing that's really critical, and we'll talk a little bit more about economic benefit largely later, is that the investment in creation of up to 1,700 mixed income housing units will generate $500 million of investment, we believe, at least. And so then when you combine that with mixed-use development, entertainment and parking, that's what's going to generate the tax increment revenues that will help us pay for the relocation. And so we think we know that's a solid estimate. We think it's conservative, given the amount of investment that will occur on this site. And we're really positive that this will occur like that. So you also we get the amphitheater site and then the housing units that we talked about. All right, so here is an image of what an amphitheater could look like. This is, don't think that this is the way it will look, but what it does demonstrate is the connection to the river. And you can see the lawn seating and how it could be and will be accessible at other times. So the amphitheater is programmed at 12,000 seat capacity. There'll be 54 events. Not all of those events will be with admission. So so you'll have your touring events, the concert type events, but you could also have symphony, opera, ballet. That would be other events. And you could have the events that City Manager Washington talked about, which would be more community-based events. So there's a variety of ways that this facility could be used. And is expecting to see 300,000 visitors per season. So that investment and the investment that we talked about will have significant countywide impact. So it will help us, but it will also help the region. And so we believe that there will be $7 million in wages driven by the amphitheater on an annual basis. And this is based on studies that have been done by CSL for Grand Action 2.0 and looking at the economics of this. We believe that there will be $474 million of net new economic impact in Kent County over 30 years. So significant investment in our community, significant economic benefit. And there'll be a lot of jobs. So there'll be jobs created by construction. There'll be jobs created by operation of the amphitheater, and there'll be jobs created by operation of mixed use and other commercial things that could happen on the 201 Market site. And so 725 jobs is a projection here. I think we'll see spin-off effects in neighboring communities, so the Granville neighborhood and Roosevelt Park, and other on the west side as well. So the sources and uses are working forward with those now. So the city manager mentioned that the cost will be approximately $116 million. The current estimate of the cost is at $160 million now. $71 million of that will be in donor, brownfield, and private investment. And of that $71 million, $20 million is anticipated to be issued by either the bonds by either the DDA or by the Brownfield Authority, likely the Downtown Development Authority. And so, and that's the only public debt in this entire investment stack. And that will be paid for through tax increment revenues generated by private investment on the site, the private investment that we talked about that will occur. So this formula has worked for the Van Andel Arena. It's worked for every major project we've done in the downtown area. And so, and it's eminently supportable. So there'll be $15 million in property resale and also CAA contributions. So the CAA is anticipating putting some of their reserves and investing that in this project, but also around the amphitheater there will be parking for example, and on parking, you can do what? You can use air rights, correct? And so just like we're doing at Studio Park, where we envisioned, or Studio C, where we envisioned the development that we had, and also the bonus of the housing on top of the parking deck. The same thing is anticipated here. And then there could be mixed use investment along the Market Street frontage or elsewhere on the site that could have housing stacked on top of it or other things. So there'll be a way for the CAA to sell some of the land and then reinvest those proceeds in the project to help keep the cost down. And then also, we have an active request in for $30 million in state investment that will help finish the revenue part of the stack. So then the uses will be $91.7 million for design, construction, contingencies, and also creation of a project reserve that could be used for ongoing asset management. And then the $24 million for the acquisition of the land. So we have some next steps. So the county has authorized the CAA to proceed, and the County Board of Commissioners took a vote on that on March 24th, and so that step has been completed. So today we're here to consider a resolution that is similar to the resolution that the County Board considered that would allow the CAA to proceed with their desire to acquire this property. And remember that this is something that we foreshadowed in 2020. So over 2 years ago, today is the day we were trying to get to 2 years ago when we started this project. So then tomorrow, on March 30th, the CAA is anticipated to take the action they need to take to move this, to take the next step to acquire the property. And then what that will do is set in motion the period for closing, which is the final due diligence that everybody needs to take between now and the anticipated closing date of June 30th of 2022. So that's where we are. And I want to say thank you all for coming with us on this journey, for the work you've done to get us to this point. You don't know how important the contributions that you have made to this have been in terms of the hard stuff we had to do early on regarding the finding a site to move to and working with our partners to relocate the sewer and doing the hard first steps that help get this project move forward. So with that, just a final thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Okay,
Before
thank you,
you do
Eric.
that-
That's a great overview of the journey we've been on to get us here to where we are today. I know our city manager wants to add something, and then I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mayor. I too want to express my great appreciation for the City Commission helping to start the momentum of the project with your earlier votes, and know that this is not just the amphitheater, as you've discussed. This is a major redevelopment project that addresses a lot of public policy issues for us. And as you're aware, we do need 9,000 housing units within 5 years based on a housing needs assessment study, and a large majority of housing supply can be added based on this project. And it just begins the momentum for us addressing that need. In context, we have 4,400 people staying downtown. We know that we could double, if not triple, that density, and we don't have a lot of green space for redevelopment or new development here in Grand Rapids, as you heard from the earlier presentation from our planning director about infill strategies for oversized lots. So I appreciate the assets that we'll get with entertainment, but also doing exactly what we said we would do with inclusive and equitable economic development opportunities. This solves a lot of other public policy issues for us. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. But I also want to be very clear. The item before us today is this body giving permission to the Convention Arena Authority to move forward with the purchase of the 11 acres. So under the CAA bylaws, that has to be approved and supported by both the County Commission and the City Commission. So I'm grateful for the overview of the entire 31-acre vision. But I also, commissioners, want to bring our attention to the fact that we are only today voting on the resolution to approve the CAA to move forward with this option. So I don't want people to think that we're approving things that are outside our scope of what we're talking about today. So, all right, so questions? Commissioner Rappard?
Sure. Thank you, Eric. That was really helpful. And it is a lot of work, and it is a big moment that we're in right now. I just have two kind of clarifying questions. Sorry, allergy season. So the initial payment into this new fund of $10 million, that's great. That's going to make our affordable housing fund up to 16 now. But then there's a phrase in here, I just want to make sure I understand what it means. The balance of payments due for the land purchased by the CA will also be deposited to this fund. Do we have a general sense of how much that is and how that's going to flow? And will that be kind of annual deposits over time, or will it be kind of more one-time larger deposits like this? So that's one question. And the other one is really in points 3 and 4 under the resolved section. I just really want to make sure that I understand what the conversation between the county and the CIA was around all benefits and risks will be borne solely by the city and CAA, and then also around debt that one is, do we think that we're going to need to issue some, and then how much, and then how did that conversation go with the county and the CIA to figure out how we're going to handle any debt on the project? Those are my two questions.
Great, thank you. So on the $10 million and the way the project flows, so recall that the overall cost of the property is about $24.3 million. So according to the MOU that we approved back in 2020, $10 million of that is due at close. And then the balance will be paid in 10 equal installments, so another $14 million. Unless agreed to otherwise. So it could be that we shorten that. We could do a number of things with it, but the idea right now, and what is in the MOU is $10 million up front, and then $1.5 million roughly over the next $1.4 million over the next 10 years.
And that'll all go into that same fund?
It'll go into the community investment fund, which then we can use that to invest in paying debt, use it to invest in the affordable housing fund. And so we've got a pro forma for that fund that shows an initial deposit and then into the affordable housing fund, and then the regular deposits over time into the affordable housing fund.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
And then in terms of the items 3 and 4, so the county has been our stalwart partner in the Kent County Convention and Arena Authority, Kent County Grand Rapids, Kent County Convention and Arena Authority, and they are still working. We're working through the convention center debt, and which is still being paid by hotel motel tax, and we had a recession in 2010. Actually 2010 to 2013 or so, and then we had a pandemic. And so they are responsible, they have, the hotel motel tax is responsible for paying that bond debt. And so they want to make sure that they keep their commitments, and we do too. So they were reluctant to get into another arrangement at this point. Now, they might do it later, but for now, they want to make sure that they can achieve their current objectives. And then in terms, so kind of in the spirit of collaboration, we said, well, we believe this is a important investment, and we believe, based on work that has been done by the Convention and Arena Authority and by Grant Action 2.0, that this project will be successful. In fact, we believe it will be as successful as the arena has been and as the convention center has been. And so we also wanted to isolate the profit and loss, essentially, for this project in this arrangement. And so that's what this means, and that's what we're recommending to you.
Though potentially there is an opportunity for us to garner some of the profit if it's wildly successful, and then there's a modest amount of risk as well that we're carrying.
Yeah, and so you might ask, well, if we're successful, as we believe we are, how will the monies be invested? And they can be invested for the benefit of the area around the amphitheater, directly adjacent to it, or to keep the amphitheater in good shape. So it's a way to help ensure that the amphitheater is successful.
Great. I also just affirm 1,700 units of apartments, and I'm thankful that that there's at least a stated goal to have a mixture of incomes, because I think that that's great to strive for wherever we're putting housing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Good questions. Commissioners, other questions? All right, Commissioner Isasi?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation, Eric. And, yes, I do think that there is a lot of information here to wade through. It was great to see kind of the history of all the steps that have been taken. And while a number of those things are in the potentially in the future, I do think it is important for me as I evaluate one asset to understand what the plan is long-term. So I appreciate this detail about how does this align with things like our economic development and mobile GR plan. So I was glad to hear about that. Certainly, Commissioner, you talked about the affordable housing, and just to know, further down what that mix might be. But of course, we've been, I think, successful as a region in trying to leverage those low-income tax housing credits at the state. So I think it is important to talk about what that potentially could be, because every single action we do has a ripple effect. And so I want to make sure that while it's one thing today, we need to consider what are the intended or unintended consequences for the future. So thank you for the for the lengthy presentation. I had a question about, I saw the community engagement, and I was actively involved in that in the past. I think as I look at this, and certainly from a racial and ethnic perspective, there were diverse community sessions, but I also think about physical accessibility as we think about just how people engage with our different services. So that I was just interested in that in terms of any engagement as it related to physical accessibility for those who have different abilities, or just, sometimes with our aging population and different mobilities and how people will access. So that's one piece. Not anything super detailed, Mr. DeLong. I think, as I look at this and look at the design about some of these pieces fitting under 131, and we know that 131, we all read The City Within a City, the mayor's book many years ago, talking about how that sort of divided up our city. I know that MDOT is looking for information about that redesign in the future, so wondering how that might play into this, so we can limit construction, hopefully, to individuals, as was mentioned. So just trying to connect those state and city and county spaces. And then my last question was, Mr. DeLong, you talked about, I think on one of the last pages, about the $30 million in state investment and an active request into that. So it just, certainly the private pieces, which we know we do that well here in this community, and the proceeds, but I wanted to hear a little bit more about that anticipation and that timeline for the state investment. Those are my three questions. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
good questions,
Commissioner.
thanks.
All right, so in terms of, first, thank you for complimenting the extended presentation. But I also want, in terms of physical accessibility, we will, of course, design this with, full accessibility. So we've experimented with things in terms of, like at Riverside Park, with accessible kayak entry points, launching points. And, we have a good partnership with Disability Advocates of Kent County, and, they're fully aware of this project as well. And but know that, yes, the whole idea here is for everybody of all ability to be able to enjoy this facility. In terms of connections, so the S-curve is likely to be the S-curve for some time. Okay, not because we just spent $100 million on it and it's in relatively good shape, and it probably will be for some time. But we can connect under it, and that's what the green ribbon will do. And at least. So now, one of the visions that Populous had was to connect over it, which that's a novel idea, right? And who knows if we can accomplish that. But I know for a fact we can accomplish connections we can accomplish connections underneath US 131. We can brighten it up, make it beautiful, and it'll be a real solid connection between the north and south portions of the property. And also, but don't dismay, because one of the things that's in the Pell study, which is people and environmental linkages, and which is a study being done by MDOT, looks at the area kind of at the end of the S-curve, the southern end of the S-curve, down past 28th Street. And the idea is, what is the future of that urban corridor of highway? And one of the things that we're working on that will come to you later is, what do we do with the Wealthy interchange? So we know that the Wealthy interchange is low functioning and not in great shape. It's a state facility, but one of the ideas that we're working on and will as part of the study is eliminating the Wealthy Bridge, where Wealthy goes over the highway, and actually taking the S-curve, the balance of the S-curve, over Wealthy Street. So that would create then a local connection for Wealthy Street, which is important for the neighborhoods, reconnecting the Hartside and the Roosevelt Park neighborhoods and the neighborhoods to the west, so up to the zoo and out to Millennium Park. So that is something that we're working actively on, and in collaboration with the county and others, MDOT and others. And so you'll see more about that probably at a meeting in May. Okay, so we can't do a service connection here, but we can do it on a street that we believe we can do it on a street that will connect to the site and be important to the site. And then in terms of the $30 million, the request has been made by the partners and is under active consideration now, and we're doing everything that's required to do to keep that request actively in front of people. And we expect to hear during this appropriation cycle or sometime later this summer.
I will add, our Legislative Affairs Office, as well as the mayor and myself, have also been actively speaking to legislators about the need to have additional public funding to support the project.
And I would also add that it's not unusual. So when the convention center was developed, so the DeVos Place Convention Center and DeVos Theater was over $200 million in terms of project cost. And at that time, the state invested $65 million in that project. So there's a pattern.
All right, I'll go to Commissioner Lanier and then Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Eric. I too appreciate the thorough presentation, and thank you guys for being here, our partners in this. I am, hopeful for this. I visit in Detroit their amphitheater that's outdoors, and have gone to a number of concerts there, and so this is reminding me of that and the possibilities of what could happen here in our great city. Actually, I don't even think it's in Detroit proper. I think it's in one of the surrounding cities. But I'm also curious about the third ward and its absence. And so, part of my work is to help to remind us of the inequities that exist in our city. Mm-hmm. And yet again, we have a great opportunity to house something that's amazing that will connect the first and second wards. And I think you did a wonderful job at explaining just how those wards will be engaged and connected to this project. But I can't help but to say that the third ward was absent from that, and obviously because of its disconnect from downtown. So I think that this is another opportunity for us. And I think we can take this information, and I think we can do something unique, something that we have not done before. And with the Community Investment Fund, this may be an opportunity as we're thinking about how to disperse the $10 million that would go into that fund to fund the Third Ward Equity Fund, so that there could be very specific projects of mass scale or larger scale in the ward that has been the least invested ward according to the city's data. And so I would just, challenge all of us around this table as we're moving forward with kind of the next phase of this work. And after the deal is done and the 10 million comes, that we can have some robust conversations, even as early as we begin this budget conversation about how do we make sure that we earmark a significant portion of that 10 million to the third ward specifically. So that's the one thing that I'll say. I think the other thing I wanted to ask or mention, I have a lot of notes here, so bear with me. Well, I wanted to just remind you, Eric, that Cesar Chavez has replaced the street of Grandville.
I was talking about, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, thank you.
I was talking about.
At some point you mentioned the street, and I just want to make sure.
The neighborhood is what I was talking about. Where
okay.
Founders is, that's what I was thinking.
You mentioned Founders,
but
that's what
I stand corrected.
Thank you.
And I should know better. So.
Thank you. And then I was curious about some of the numbers on slide 9 in the deck. It was some of the projections about the number of seasonal events that potentially could occur. Just wondering, how do you, what's the formula in understanding that these are the possibilities? I think it's great to know that there could be 54 seasonal events and then 300,000 visitors possibly to the amphitheater annually. And I think that that's great, especially in West Michigan where our summers seem so short. And let me see if I had another question before you answer. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Commissioner.
Good points.
So the Community Investment Fund is named Community Investment Fund for a reason. And those are decisions that will be made as part of the budget process and made by the commission. So Community Investment Fund. And then in terms of the events, so the pro forma for the amphitheater was done by the Convention and Arena Authority, and they're represented here today, and in cooperation with several consultants who also assisted them in that. And they believe that somewhere between 24 and 30 of those events will be ticketed events, so the big concerts that we would expect, the touring groups, and the balance would be those smaller community events and or community organization events. So it could be, nothing is settled yet, of course, but it could be the symphony, it could be the ballet, it could be. My grandparents lived in St. Louis, Missouri, and so I was born there. But anyways, that's irrelevant. But they do have a great municipal opera that is outdoors at Forest Park, which is an old 1903. World's Fair exhibition site. And it is a beautiful evening at the theater to hear a musical or an opera outdoors in that environment. And so that's a potential. So so you have some that are paid events and some that are community events, including events that could be done by Grand Rapids Public Schools, for example.
Maybe we need a good event planner to come up with some great ideas on how the space could be used.
Right. So is it like as soon as you cut the ribbon, this happens year one, or is it? And I know you kind of plan for these things in advance. Are we expecting it to happen immediately, or is this over time we would get to this place, or do we know? Is this too early for this question?
Mayor, if I could on the programming, so we have representatives from CAA who's aware of the programming Live Nation, if you wish.
Mr. Rich McKeegan, would you like to speak to this?
I'm sorry, I keep looking at you, Rich.
And then I'll get to Commissioner Jones.
And I mistakenly said partnerships from 21 Row Live, and I meant Live Nation earlier, so forgive me for that.
So if we're not busy when the ribbons are cut, I'm in trouble.
Okay.
It's that simple. These venues exist all over the country, all over North America. The partnership that we already have with Live Nation as the country's largest owner, operator, and booker of outdoor concert venues, amphitheaters, is significant. They are our largest partner for arena concerts currently. Their interest in West Michigan, Grand Rapids, continues to be very, very strong. They're very bullish on this as an outdoor concert venue. And because they control the routing for all of these shows, when we say we're open, that's when they will start planning for those events. I will say, Commissioner Lanier, the community events could take some time for people to actually see what the asset is and come and experience the asset and then understand how they could best utilize the asset. So I think that might take a little bit, but we need to be busy when we're open.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Well, and I'll add before I turn to Commissioner Jones, and then I'll see if we can call the question. Commissioners, if you look at the history of the CAA and Van Andel, especially under the management of ASM, make sure I get the acronyms right, Van Andel has been a long, and the convention center has been a great community partner. So Van Andel, obviously, they host events with Grand Rapids Public Schools and with a number of nonprofits. They give back in a lot of ways. When the Van Andel was open, they made a commitment to hiring local. So they're key partners, and I think they have a strong track record of that. And I would anticipate that will continue as we move forward in partnership with them. So. Commissioner Jones, and then I'll see if we're ready to call the question.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. DeLong, for the presentation on this morning. I think that first thing I'll state is the fact that myself and others over time have heard from community about legitimate concerns in terms of how something of this magnitude or anything really downtown can better benefit the entirety of the city. And I think it's fair to say that this particular development opportunity is going to be something that is going to be of great benefit to the entire county, the entire region. And at the same time, the question is, how can it impact, those who call Grand Rapids home? And so with regards to what my colleague Commissioner Lanier mentioned, I think it's there is concern about how is this something that can be of benefit to the Third Ward in particular, or to those who have been historically marginalized within our beloved community, particularly African Americans and Latinx. And I think what gives me some sense of peace and assurance with this particular project is I've had the opportunity to work over the years in particular with Grand Rapids Kent County Convention Arena Authority and with Mr. McKeegan and company in the efforts to advance and promote equity and do it in a way that's more than just words. And so I know that there is a significant commitment to the work of equity with regards to the Grand Rapids Kent County Convention Arena Authority and ASM, the company in which Mr. McKeegan represents. And it goes beyond just trying to bring a diverse entertainment options to Grand Rapids, but we've long talked about and there's work there to show the commitment of wanting to get down to even who it is that's working in the facilities, opportunities that are presented to those who've been historically marginalized, and even beyond working. Is there an opportunity for, as an example, promoters of color who would like to have events that are taking place down in the buildings, as well as contractors. And I think when we look at a project of this magnitude, there has to be a very unapologetic and intentional commitment to contract those who have the skill set and the businesses to participate with building this behemoth. And so I am very confident that we have in place a process, thanks to the work that has been done by city staff years ago with the River Equity Plan, something that I was very much involved in and very committed to, in that we're talking about a body of water that does not, it clearly, touches the first and second ward, but does not get throughout the city. And so how can the rest of the city benefit? And I'm grateful for the work of Stacy, Sierra, AJ, and our equity office in putting together a plan that can make sure that we're constantly out there trying to increase the number of businesses that are owned by people of color to participate in opportunities that we have available in the city. And I think that we can have, no pun intended, a ripple effect with this opportunity, as well as what we're looking to do with the River Equity Plan. And I think we have to, again, not just say it, we've got to be about doing it. And I know that both the Grand Rapids King County Convention Arena Authority, as well as those who are involved with a lot of what's going on downtown, knows that this cannot and should not and will not be business as usual in terms of how this thing is built, who gets opportunities, because ultimately this has to be something that shows not just short-term but long-term benefit for more people. And I think this type of project can do just that. Again, it pleases me that obviously it's in our city, so we have obviously a say of how these things go. But what's all the more pleasing is the fact that in working with the Grand Rapids King County Convention Arena Authority, there is an openness to wanting to make sure that we can lift this up as a model project. I believe that we can and we will, and recognizing that we have our limitations because of Prop 2 back in 2006, but that does not remove, I think, the opportunity for us to be, again, very intentional in saying that we would like to find opportunities for businesses that are owned by people of color to participate in this project, as well as ways in which we can take investment or the revenues from these opportunities to be able to provide for, again, future development within the Third Ward or other parts of the city that don't touch the river. And so I am supportive, I am excited, and I just believe that we have an opportunity to really show. Again, historically, we've been able to talk about the commitment. I think this is an opportunity to actually show our commitment. I think that we will do that. And I couldn't be, again, more pleased with the fact that we're partnering with the Grand Rapids King County Convention Arena Authority, Mr. McKeegan and company. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Well said. And Commissioner, thank you for your work on the CAA subcommittees. All right, Commissioners, with that, I will call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, Commissioners, next that will take us to our resolution. Item number 5, resolution establishing an industrial development district for Action Tooling LLC located at 3100 Kenosha Industrial Park Court.
So move. Mayor, do you want to take 6 with it?
Oh, I think I have to do them separate.
Okay.
Unfortunately. So there's, but I'll have one presentation, one review. So thank you, Commissioner. So I have a motion and support. Mr. Gracia, you want to tell us about this?
Sure. So this project, again, just to remind everyone, is to facilitate the construction of a new 15,400 square foot industrial facility for Action Tooling to retain, or actually expand their capabilities to serve their customers. That results in retaining 25 jobs and creating 15 new jobs at roughly $30 an hour. They also have participated in our inclusion plan, and so 7% of the project is being the goals, committed overall goals, 7% to minority-owned, women-owned, and micro-local subcontractors. And this had a public hearing on March 15th, and there were no comments.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, that will take us to our next item, which is a companion item, and this is a resolution approving an application for a 12-year industrial facilities exemption certificate pursuant to Public Act 198 of 1974 for Action Tooling LLC for a $4.6 million project located at 3100 Kenosha Industrial Park Court Southeast.
So move.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. Commissioners, anything to add or any additional questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, that will take us to our next resolution, and this is a resolution amending City Commission Policy 900-54 under Business Improvement Districts and Boards. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Support.
All right, moved and supported. And Commissioners, I believe we have a presentation for this item.
Sorry about that.
All right.
All right. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. So if that's okay, I'd like to cover this item and the next item in my presentation.
Yes, that would be lovely.
So as mentioned, what you have before you today is an amended City Commission policy on business improvement districts and boards. So the original policy was approved by the City Commission on August 28th of 2012. And the act that I'll be referring to today in my presentation is Michigan Public Act 120 of 1961. This act has two chapters. The first one covers the principal shopping districts and business improvement districts. The second covers business improvement zones. So I'll just touch really quickly too on why we're asking you to amend the policy. So over the last year or two, we've had interest from our corridor improvement authorities in creating a special assessment district for district maintenance purposes, similar to what we have in Uptown. And in trying to provide guidance to our CIAs, we reviewed the policy, our current operations with Uptown, and the legislation, and we found a few inconsistencies. Specifically, the policy restated sections of both chapters of the Act, and additionally, the policy or the Act has been amended several times since the approval of the initial policy. So just some background on the difference between a bid and a biz. So a biz is basically the difference is how they're created and administered. So a biz is a legal separate entity from the city. It's created by a petition of property owners with approval by the City Commission. Special revenue assessments cannot be held by the city on behalf of a biz, so they are responsible and liable for all decisions it makes in terms of spending. The bid is not a legal separate entity from the city. It is created only by resolution of the City Commission. And the special assessment revenues are held by the city, and we have oversight over board decisions and spending. And then the board composition is slightly different, just specifically in terms of number of members. So the policy changes. So the purpose of the amended policy is really to just correct legislative references and to provide very clear guidance on how an entity can seek the creation of a bid. So the changes are as follows. So it incorporates Chapter 1 of the Act by reference only. So as I mentioned, the previous policy kind of restated Chapters 1 and 2, sections of both in the policy. And the purpose, we've also added some supplemental information and requirements for the creation and administration of the bid. And the purpose of those requirements is to provide increased transparency and accountability that goes above and beyond what's required by the Act. So those requirements that we've added include that the creation of the bid has to be initiated by a formalized group of stakeholders like a business association or a CIA. The stakeholder group has to submit a bid feasibility study and an initial marketing and development plan, and the requirements for those two documents are outlined in the policy and in the Act. But I think the most important thing to note with the feasibility study is that they have to be able to show that they had proactive outreach with the community, with the businesses, with the property owners that it will affect. And then those documents will be submitted to the Economic Development Department. We will review them and determine if they meet the requirements of the policy and the Act. And if they do, we will ask the City Commission to schedule a public hearing to approve or to consider the approval of the district itself. If you decide to create the district and the bid wants to levy special assessments, the city would conduct an election of property owners in the proposed district. And if 60% or more of the property owners vote yes to the special assessment, we would consider it approved. So the main sort of change that impacts what we do currently is the board appointment process. So it's required by the Act that board members be nominees of property owners in the district. In addition to that, there's one seat that's reserved for a city representative chosen by the mayor. So nominees for board seats will still be required to go through the normal appointments process. It's just kind of how they get there. So they have to be nominees, and then we would forward them on to the city clerk for that process to go through. So related to Uptown specifically, so it was created, and the entity itself was created consistent with the requirements of the Business Improvement Zone chapter of the Act by way of petition and a property owner election. However, they also did meet the requirements of the creation of a bid. So in working with the attorney's office, we determined that they could operate either way. And so an effort to clear up any confusion and to be really specific, Uptown voted at its meeting in December 2021 to operate as a bid. So it's important to note that this policy it's related to the bid, but it doesn't really impact what we currently do with them. So we continue to provide administration, oversight of their special assessment funds, and we enter into contracts on their behalf. The only thing that's really going to change is that board appointment process. Additionally, this doesn't impact the Downtown Improvement District, so they were created and operate under Chapter 23 of the Code of Ordinances. So this is only specific to Uptown and any future business improvement district that we might create. So related to the next item, the board rules. So in order to be in compliance with the act, Uptown needed to make some minor changes to their rules. So the board rules before you for consideration provide a method for taking board member nominations. And nominations will come from each of the 4 Uptown business districts and will be voted on by those districts and forwarded on to the city clerk's office to go through the vetting process. So the board rules really only, other than the appointment process, only change legislative references. And Uptown also did specifically request to have term limits for their board members, just for the bid only. So this would mean that the board members would be able to serve 2 consecutive 4-year terms. And the bid board did review these board rules at their meeting in February and approved them. So that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Okay. Commissioner Lanier?
Thank you so much, Jessica, for the presentation. Uptown currently is just a CIA. They don't have, I thought they had a bid already.
They have both.
They had a bid and a biz?
No, they have a bid and a CIA.
Okay, so they were, and so then why did they have to take a vote to operate as a bid if they were already a bid? I thought I understood it when I was reading it here, but when you said that, I thought, okay, I thought they already had a bid.
So in the creation of Uptown, there was a little bit of confusion. I think that's sort of come to light more recently because the way that they were created, as I mentioned, was consistent with the business improvement zone section of the legislation. And all the sort of legislative references were Chapter 2, which is the biz. But again, as the attorney's office let us know, they could be either one. So we just wanted to kind of clarify. We worked with them directly to kind of determine which way they wanted to go. They were kind of like an in-between, I guess, if you would, and they were operating fine either way. But we wanted that clarification moving forward, and also because we want consistency, if possible, amongst whatever entity we create moving forward. So we just kind of wanted to make sure that that was clear moving forward. Yep.
Yeah, thank you for that.
It was confusing to a lot of people.
Okay, yeah. And so then my second question is I know in Southtown, who doesn't have a bid yet, it's kind of one of the items on their list. They wanted to have the same structure in their the members of their board because they're a 6-district body and wanted to have representatives from the businesses or property owners and all in each of those 6 districts. So then, and I don't know if you're prepared to answer this today, and maybe perhaps you can come back to me on this, but how does the CIA, since the majority of our bodies are CIA specifically, how do they fit with this structure in terms of whether they can make they can have a policy change to allow for that as well?
So specifically board members and from the business district or to have the same board be on the bid, I guess is.
No, I'm asking for the CIA's board to mirror what this is outlining, because I know that, I don't know how quickly they'll get to, or if they ever will get to a bid, but what they wanted their existing board to have for the Corridor Improvement District Authority is that each of the 6 districts would be represented. I think there are 7 seats there. No, maybe 9.
9.
Yeah, because there were also a couple residents as well. So that was kind of that was the practice that they had. And then I think maybe 2 years ago, it was kind of unwind where it was shared that they could no longer practice in that manner. So I'm just curious to know if that's possible with some of the new language that I think you found in researching for this. How does it impact the CIAs?
I mean, I think that could be another conversation that we could certainly have. I think at the time I think 2 years ago, we had a lot of vacancies and we weren't getting representation from all of those other districts. And so there were other folks that had applied that really wanted to serve. And so I think that's kind of why we got away from that, but it's not in the bylaws. So I think we would have to update bylaws as well as the policy for the CIAs. So it's certainly a conversation we could have, but.
But just to be clear, just so I'm clear, because I don't want to muddy the water between a bid and a CIA.
Yep.
The state legislation, enabling legislation for a CIA is different.
It is.
Than the bid. So there's different, I think that's
That's
where
the
we have to
question
start.
I'm asking. Yeah.
Is looking at state legislation and enabling legislation.
Yeah.
Because those are very different.
They are, and the CIA legislation is much broader in terms of who's allowed to serve on the board. So
it's quite a bit different.
Yeah, so that if you can get that question back, that would be helpful to know if in fact they could have the same structure, because I know that was a desire.
Okay.
And I think at the time when it was a desire, there weren't vacancies at that time because the board had begun working on developing relationships in each of those business districts. And so that would be helpful to know because I think that body would want to know that information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good question. All right, any other questions before I call the question? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, and that will take us again to this companion here. This is a resolution approving the revised board rules for the Uptown Business Improvement District. Can I get a motion?
Support.
All right, moved and supported. Any additional questions? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? It carries. All right, Commissioners, that will take us to our last item. And actually, why don't I do this before we go to the funding recommendations? So I have Ms. Bohach come up and prepare. She does have a PowerPoint and a presentation for us. But before we do that, can I ask for an executive approval to go into executive session for quarterly reviews for our clerk at 2 and treasurer at 4?
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported, and then this is a voice vote, so Commissioner Sassi?
Yes.
Repart?
Yes.
Lanier?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Moody?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, thank you. All right, so now I'll turn it over to Ms. Bohach. I'll start by thanking my colleagues around this table who served on the subcommittee that helped create these recommendations that are coming before us today. I'll turn it over. City Manager, did you want to add anything?
Nothing to add, Mayor.
Okay, so Ms. Bohach?
There we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
Make sure that I have control over I don't have a PowerPoint. I'm sorry. Screen. Oh, I'm sorry. We've advanced technology and I'm not with it apparently. Do you want me to? Thank you. All right, well, let's start over. Good morning. So today, we'd like to present to you the FY 2023 funding recommendations for a variety of investments. So it's a total of just over $8.3 million of federal funds that to achieve outcomes that are included in 3 different plans that are administered by the Community Development Department. So while hopefully we'll do this really high level and it will seem very easy. It's a bit complex because we have so many things coming into one process. But this allocates resources under those 3 plans, which are the Neighborhood Investment Plan, where we award our annual allocations of the Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnerships, Emergency Solutions Grants, as well as a small amount of Burn Memorial Justice Assistance Grant funds. Those support housing and community development activities that are connected to and carried out during the 2nd year of our 5-year Consolidated Housing and Community Development Plan, and actually constitutes the application that we submit to HUD for those entitlement programs, the Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership, and Emergency Solutions Grant Program. We are also allocating resources under the Home ARP allocation plan. So that was an allocation of funds that we received, which was a supplemental home award authorized by the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. And that's to primarily benefit individuals and families who are homeless, at risk of homelessness, or in other vulnerable populations. And our plan specifically focuses on development of affordable housing and the provision of supportive services. And under this program, supportive services also includes rental assistance. And then the third area is what we refer to as our economic resiliency and recovery investment strategy. That was the framework that we put together for a large amount of CARES Act funds, which we received a supplemental award of community development block grant funds through. And that's to respond, to prevent, prepare for, respond to the coronavirus pandemic. And really what we're using is reprogrammed funds from earlier rounds of that investment to support resident resiliency impact area of the ERAS plan. So when we think about our entitlement programs, or when we go to allocate those resources, Congress does an appropriation on an annual basis for the CDBG home and ESG programs. And when we stand in front of you to provide, recommend investments, we often do not know our actual award amounts. So we know what Congress has appropriated in terms of the large buckets for those programs, but not our individual awards. They have up to 45 days to provide that information to jurisdictions. And so we're working on estimates. And based on those large pots of money that have been put into the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's budgets, we're estimating approximately a 5% decrease from last year in the Community Development Block Grant Program. So so we're estimating around $192,000 decrease. Under the home program, it's actually an increase, and we're estimating about $142,000. ESG would be at sustained levels, and then we are working with a known number for the JAG award that was already awarded and put into this. The timing of that award comes a little bit earlier, and so then we fold it into the process. On a local level, when we allocate these resources, although our federal award levels come in at certain amounts, we design our programs so that some projects actually give us program income. So it gives us the ability to bring that back in and put it into future funding cycles, as well as any programmed but unspent funds will get reprogrammed as well. And again, that allows us to operate our local program higher than what the entitlement amounts provide to us. So we just talked about 3 different plans and a whole variety of funding sources. We're very unique in our approach here in Grand Rapids. Traditionally, most communities would take all of these funding sources and issue an RFP separately for every funding source, and they do that on an annual basis. We do that through one application process, and so it took us a number of years to perfect that, and we decided that it's been working well, and so why not throw in the 2 supplemental programs as well. Through this one application process, all of those funds, including the home ARP and the reprogrammed community development CV funds, were handled all through this one application process. Our process is a 2-step approach. We have a notice of intent to apply, where we received responses for 83 projects from 54 organizations, and then we vet those, and then we have a full application where where projects are then organizations are then invited to submit projects. And so we invited and received applications for 71 projects, requesting a total of $15.4 million. This process, starts with staff in the Community Development Department, and we work in partnership with an RFP committee, and that's comprised of 1 commissioner from each ward, and our members this year were Commissioners Jones, Moody, and O'Connor, and so we really appreciate their work on this because it is very time-consuming and can be a little bit complex. And we also seek input for those, we'll get to the outcome areas a little bit later, but we also seek input from the Coalition to End Homelessness. They have a funding review committee that looks at these proposals under that outcome area and provides some consultation to us in formulating the recommendations. Although we have three very distinct plans that we will be submitting in terms of how these investments align and how we report that information to HUD, we align them for this whole application process under the neighborhood investment plan. So all of these investments align with outcomes within the neighborhood investment plan as well as the the city's strategic plan. So when we put them in the framework for presentation, it's aligned to the neighborhood investment plan. This is a very high-level summary of all the outcome areas and the proposed investments. If you would like more detail on any of these projects, just let me know, and we can provide that information to you after the meeting and in the coming weeks. So the neighborhood investment plan outcome 1 is to prevent and resolve episodes of homelessness, and these projects also align with the city's strategic plan of economic prosperity and affordability. And we have just over $2.3 million of investments that support efforts to obtain or retain housing stability for individuals and families experiencing homelessness or who are at risk of homelessness. And you can see there's a variety of organizations where investment is really supporting opportunities for rapid rehousing, tenant-based rental assistance, and supportive services to ensure housing stability. In total, these recommendations support approximately 625, or will support 625 households in receiving financial assistance and supportive services to help them obtain or retain permanent housing, and there's 4,500 people will actually complete intake assessment processes that is really the first step in helping them resolve their episodes of homelessness. Under outcome 2, improve access to and stability of affordable housing. This addresses the city's strategic priority of economic prosperity and affordability. And there's $169,600 that's recommended to support housing stability and equal access to housing. There's a variety of services that we have traditionally supported through the Fair Housing Center and Legal Aid of West Michigan, as well as a new project from the Fair Housing Center that's supported with the CDBG CV funds for additional education and outreach for those impacted by the coronavirus related to housing, fair housing issues. There are projects that were not recommended for funding due to the limited availability of funds, and particularly for any areas where there may have been a public service activity that was involved. Outcome 3, increase the supply of affordable housing. This also aligns with the economic and prosperity affordability strategic plan priority, and there's just over $1.8 million for efforts to increase the number of newly constructed and rehabilitated affordable rental and homeownership units available to low and moderate income households. And on this, there's 3 slides for this outcome area, and the first items here are comprised of primarily rental units on the west side and in the Southtown area, as well as construction of 3 new homes in the Southtown area. This slide shows the additional or a significant number of additional renovations for creating residential units. For example, the PK Company's Academy Manor Senior Residence is a large project with 108 residential units. It's a redevelopment of the Marywood campus, and new construction of units for persons experiencing homelessness through Well House, and then a small project for the New Development Corporation. New Development Corporation also is eligible to receive some operating support, what's called a CHOTO organization, and home funds support those activities. There are some projects in this area that we did not recommend for funding. Some of them have uncommitted funds for the same or a similar project from the previous year. And there are a couple projects that are good projects, but they don't at this time have their construction financing has not been identified, so it's a little early in the process. So we have recommended a total of projects that total a support of of creating 211 new housing units, and then we reserved approximately $2.3 million of the home ARP funds to be invested in projects at a future time. And then under outcome 4, improve the condition of existing housing. That supports the city's strategic priority of safe community. And there's just under $3 million that support home repair and accessibility improvements to help keep people in their homes, improve health and safety, and reduce blight. In this area, there's a significant amount of enforcement dollars, but the majority, 53%, supports actual investments for individuals to access programs to make improvements to their home, to remedy issues that they may have, whether it's through code enforcement, prevention of that happening, as well as a variety of other resources that can be accessed. There is one project that is not recommended for funding that was a newly proposed project from previous years. Under outcome 5, foster engaged, connected, and resilient neighborhoods. This supports the city's strategic plan under engaged and connected community. And there's $335,750 recommended for activities that support or actions that build relationships, lift resident voice, and enhance neighborhood stability. Activities traditionally include community organizing, education referral services, and to also organize to promote equitable development. This is the bulk of the resources in this area goes to our neighborhood organizations and organizations that support the similar activities within neighborhoods. This funding is actually recommended at a level that is 25% increase over the current levels that they're receiving. And it's intended that that increase help to support enhanced resident engagement in the city's master plan process, because we're moving into that. We know how important it is to make sure that citizens are engaged, and believe that the neighborhood associations can play an important role in bridging that gap with residents. That recommendation is also able to be made as a result of the use of the CDBG CV funds, which is a one-time funding source. And so there were projects that were funded in other areas using the CV funds because it had an eligibility and could be used that way, but would not be able to do that in the future. And then funding is not recommended for one of the projects because there's just a lack of available funds, and more focus was placed on the leadership development side. And then outcome 6, improve community safety, supports the city's strategic priority of safe neighborhoods. There's just under $500,000 that's recommended to enhance resident safety and quality of life in neighborhoods. And that's where we focus activities on crime prevention, education, organizing, and violence reduction strategies. Again, this is primarily an area that supports our neighborhood organizations or those doing that work within neighborhoods, and it's a 25% increase on that side of the equation for those organizations as well. And we also then have a project that we've recommended continued funding for, which is the Family Outreach Center for mental health services. And then outcome 7, improve economic opportunity. That supports the city's strategic priority of economic prosperity and affordability. And it's $220,000 of investment for equitable economic prosperity, which includes improving financial and social capital. These are projects that are the first two are new projects that we have not seen before, and with the CDBG CV funds, it allows us to provide that investment. And then the remaining projects, the Hispanic Center, Steepletown, West Michigan Center for Arts and Technology, and the Women's Resource Center are projects that we have funded in the past. And again, we're using the CDBG CV funds to support those activities in this year and would not be able to do so next year. Funding is not recommended for a project that was just due to the limited availability of the public service funds. And then outcome 8, we have enhanced neighborhood infrastructure. We do not recommend any investments at this time because we want to prioritize other areas for those, which really uses the general CDBG sort of category of funds for those infrastructure improvements, and believe that there's other opportunities with other money that's out and available these days for those types of investments. So that brings us to what's next. So we have a public comment opportunity and then approval and submission of our plans. And we had the funding recommendations published and made available to the public on March 25th. That really launched our 30-day public comment period, and citizens are invited to provide input on these funding recommendations through these various plans. It can be submitted to us in writing to the Community Development Department at communitydev@grcity.us, and we'll take written comments through April 25th. And then there's also an opportunity to participate in a public hearing before the City Commission on April 12th. And funding recommendations and these plans are all available on the Community Development website at www.grcd.info. And if anyone has any questions about any of this, they can call the Community Development Department at 456-3677. And then we will come back to you with final awards and final plans, approval for final plan submissions, and ask for your approval on May 10th.
Great, thank you, Ms. Bohach. So commissioners, again, I think all of us have been through this process before, so this is the first time it's been presented publicly to us, but we have a number of weeks before us as we get community input on these recommendations. If you have additional questions, I encourage you to follow up with Ms. Bohach, and then bring any concerns that you hear from the community to her attention before it comes back to us later in May. So any final questions? I know some of you have to scoot out of here right at noon, so I will take any final questions before we wrap this up. Go ahead.
I'll make it quick. I know with the neighborhood associations, they recognize the one-time funding, but I'm curious about priorities under, I think it was number 7. If those organizations, if they're familiar with some of those dollars or one-time dollars, so that they don't necessarily rely on those dollars as reoccurring dollars.
Yeah, that's a great
I think
point.
in putting together the recommendations, and I of course encourage the committee to respond as well. We really tried to focus first on new projects in terms of being the recipient of the one-time dollars. And again, we're working with multiple streams of funding with different eligibility, so focusing on those that can be eligible for that, using that to fund new projects first. And then it does make us have to make some decisions in future rounds. So those dollars won't be there. Those projects will all compete in that public services category, which has a cap in terms of the amount that you can spend by the federal statute. And so there may be some decisions that have to be made in the future in terms of, what projects then stay, what's the priority at that time when we do this the next time around.
Thank you. And then, I think I would encourage the public, if they're interested, and hopefully this is on the website as well, the spreadsheet, because I think it tells the story that you just told in a kind of at a glance format. So for them to go to that to kind of see who all applied, what they requested, what's being recommended, and how they were funded in the past. Thank you so much for your work, and to the committee as well.
Yeah, thanks. Those are really good
And if I
points,
could just say thank you to the community development staff who really put a lot of time and energy into the process. It's a very complex process, requires a lot of work in terms of reviewing proposals and preparing for conversations to get here.
Yeah, thanks. And I believe our city manager wants to make a final comment, and then we'll go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually
and-
want to thank the community development staff and Ms. Bohach for their very important work, and I appreciate this year highlighting the recommendations in detail, because we have so many members of our community who are not aware of the intentional efforts that we have around the housing funding in the housing spectrum, and particularly those who are in most need of some of these entitlement funds. And so this helps with the public education as well, and so would encourage members of the public to continue to share the information that was presented this morning in very detail. Is also reemphasized in the packet. And then secondly, I would just ask, as we talk about these, as far as I'm concerned, everything is an annual award, even though the source of funding may differ year to year. I would encourage us to think of it as an annual process regardless of the source of funding. So there is no guaranteed reprogramming of dollars just because it was awarded this year, just like our annual budget process. So I just wanted to clarify that.
And we operate with annual contracts as well, so they're only 12-month contracts.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, City Manager. So Commissioners, with that, just a couple of reminders. We do have a couple of our reviews with appointed officials. We also have public safety today at 3 o'clock, and then we'll be back in here tonight at 7. So we will recess our Committee of the Whole. Thanks.